She told me to stay away from our daughter's wedding. For years, I had tried to be a part of her life, but my ex-wife had always kept me at arm's length. But when the wedding day came, the last thing I expected was for her to say those words to me. So, what did I do next? The answer will leave you speechless. Stick around to find out what happened, and make sure to subscribe and comment below with your thoughts on what I did. You won't want to miss this. For years, I had watched from the sidelines, hoping, wishing, and waiting for a chance to be part of my daughter's life. Her mother, my ex-wife, had made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with me after the divorce. It wasn't that I hadn't tried. I reached out, sent gifts, called on her birthdays, and even tried to stay involved in her life through social media. But nothing ever seemed to make a difference. It was like I was invisible to her. Our daughter, Emily, had always been the light of my life, but I couldn't understand why her mother didn't want me around. I never asked for much. All I wanted was to be there for her, whether it was attending school plays, helping with her homework, or just being there to talk when she needed someone. But with every year that passed, I felt like that connection with my daughter was slipping further away. When I first heard about Emily's wedding, I was overjoyed. A part of me couldn't believe it. My little girl was getting married. It was a milestone I had been looking forward to for so long. But deep down, I knew there was a challenge ahead. Her mother. I tried to stay hopeful, imagining that Emily might invite me. After all, she was an adult now. She could make her own decisions. But I also knew the truth. I wasn't the one who had the final say. That was her mother. And as much as I hoped things had changed between us, I had no illusions. My ex-wife was still the gatekeeper. I remember the day Emily called me to inform me about the wedding. She was sweet, as always, but I could tell there was something in her voice, a hesitation, a subtle anxiety. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something important," Emily said over the phone. "I've been thinking a lot about you being at the wedding." My heart sank. I braced myself for what I feared would come next. "Mom said it might be best if you don't come. She doesn't think it's a good idea," Emily continued, her voice tinged with guilt. "I'm sorry, but it's her decision." I tried to keep my composure, but inside my emotions were running wild. I had prepared myself for this moment, but hearing it directly from Emily made it all too real. The one thing I had been looking forward to, the one thing I had hoped would bring us together, was slipping through my fingers. "Emily, I understand," I said, trying to hide the hurt in my voice. "It's your day. I just want you to be happy." But in reality, I wasn't okay with it. I wasn't just going to stand by and let my ex-wife make that decision for me. It wasn't just about me being excluded from the wedding. It was about my relationship with my daughter, and I wasn't ready to give up on that. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that I had been wronged. I wasn't going to let my ex-wife dictate my relationship with Emily any longer. It was time to do something about it. I couldn't just accept being sidelined anymore. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Emily's wedding pass without me being there, no matter what her mother said. It was time to fight for what mattered. The decision had been made. I wasn't going to let my daughter's wedding slip away without making an effort to be a part of it. No more hiding in the shadows, no more waiting for permission. This was my daughter's moment, and I had every right to be there. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy. My ex-wife had made her stance clear, and she wouldn't back down easily. I spent the next few days wrestling with myself, debating how to approach the situation. Should I confront her directly? Should I reach out to Emily again and plead my case? I didn't want to make things worse, but I knew I couldn't just walk away. This was too important. Eventually, I decided the best approach was to go straight to the source, my ex-wife. I had to tell her how I felt and why I believed it was crucial for me to be at the wedding. I didn't care if it caused a confrontation. I needed her to understand that I was doing this for Emily, not for me. I couldn't let her continue to control the narrative. The phone call wasn't easy. My ex-wife picked up on the first ring, her voice cold as usual. "What do you want?" she asked, already sounding annoyed. "I need to talk to you about the wedding," I said, trying to sound calm, even though my frustration was bubbling just below the surface. "I know you've made it clear that you don't want me there, but I can't just sit back and accept that. Emily deserves to have both of her parents at her wedding." "Jason," she interrupted, her voice sharp, "I don't want to have this conversation. You know why I'm asking you not to come. It's better this way. For everyone." "I don't understand why you're doing this," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "This is Emily's wedding, not yours. She's the one who should decide who's there, not you." "You think you can just waltz back into her life after all these years?" she snapped. "You've barely been a part of her life. And now, suddenly, you think you can show up and act like you've always been there?" Her words stung, but I wasn't going to let her push me around this time. I had spent too many years being excluded, and it was time to fight for what mattered. I wasn't going to back down. "You're right," I said, my voice steady now. "I haven't been there the way I should have been, but that's all changing now. I know I can't undo the past, but I can make sure I'm there for Emily now. I want to be a part of her life again. I want to be a part of her future." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her thinking it over. I knew she had to be angry, but I also knew she had to understand that I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I wasn't going to let her keep me away from my daughter. Finally, my ex-wife spoke again, her voice quieter now. "This is your last chance, Jason. If you show up at that wedding, you'll make things worse. Emily won't forgive you for it. She's already upset enough." I didn't let her words sway me. I knew what I had to do. "I'm not doing this for me," I said, my voice firm. "I'm doing this for Emily. If you truly care about her, you'll understand why I need to be there. She deserves that. We both do." There was another long pause before she sighed. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But don't say I didn't warn you." I could feel the tension lift, but the relief was short-lived. It was only the beginning. I had convinced her to let me attend the wedding, but now I had to make sure Emily knew that I was coming. I wasn't sure how she would feel about me being there after everything that had happened, but I hoped that, deep down, she wanted me there. I had to believe that. The next day, I called Emily. She answered on the first ring, her voice tentative, as though she was bracing for some kind of confrontation. "Hey, Dad," she said softly. "Emily, I need to talk to you about the wedding," I began. "I've spoken to your mom, and I want you to know I'm going to be there. I'm not going to miss this. You deserve to have both your parents there, and I'm going to make sure that happens." There was a long silence, and I held my breath, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know what to say, Dad," she whispered. "It's been so hard, but I want you there. I really do." Hearing those words made everything worth it. It wasn't going to be easy, but at least I knew I had made the right choice. I was finally fighting for the relationship with my daughter that I should have fought for years ago. As the wedding day drew closer, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. The excitement of being there for Emily, the nervousness of re-entering her life after so many years, and the fear of how everything would play out. It all weighed heavily on me. But at the same time, there was a sense of purpose, something I hadn't felt in a long time. This was my chance to prove to Emily that I could be the father she deserved, no matter how complicated the situation had become. I had talked to Emily, and while she hadn't been completely thrilled by the idea of me showing up at the wedding, I could hear the relief in her voice. She wanted me there, even if she was hesitant. I understood. It wasn't easy to rebuild trust after so many years of distance. But this was her special day, and I wasn't going to let her feel like she was caught between her parents. I had to show up, not just physically, but emotionally too. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something that resembled hope. I hadn't thought I would ever be in this position again, on the outside looking in, but still wanting to be part of my daughter's life. The thought that I was about to see her walk down the aisle made my chest tighten, and I couldn't help but smile. I couldn't have imagined this moment without being there. I arrived early at the venue, trying to gather myself. The nerves had hit me full force once I parked my car. As I walked toward the entrance, I saw the decorations, the flowers, the candles, the soft music playing in the background. It was everything Emily had dreamed of, and as I walked inside, the reality of the moment hit me. This was real. Emily was getting married, and I had been invited. No, I had fought to be here, to witness this new chapter in her life. I could see the guests, all chatting and laughing, some of them noticing me as I made my way to the back. No one seemed to know what to say to me. It had been so long since I had been part of this world, and though I had been invited, it felt like I was still an outsider. I found my seat quietly, trying to blend in. But all I could focus on was Emily. She was the center of this day, and I couldn't stop thinking about the little girl she once was, the girl I held in my arms as a baby, the girl who had grown up with so many questions. And then the moment came. The doors opened, and I saw her. My daughter. She was breathtaking. The white gown she wore glowed under the lights, and as she stepped forward, all I could do was hold my breath. The love in her eyes as she looked at her soon-to-be husband was undeniable. But so was the emptiness in her gaze when she glanced around the room. For just a second, her eyes met mine. It wasn't the reaction I expected. There was no shock, no surprise, just a quiet acknowledgement, a silent connection between us. In that moment, everything felt like it was in its right place. I wasn't just a spectator anymore. I was her father. I had earned my place here. But before I could truly absorb the beauty of the moment, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there she was, my ex-wife. Her expression was unreadable. She had seen me, and I knew that now there was no turning back. She wasn't happy to see me, I could tell, but there was something different about her demeanor. "You really did show up," she said, her voice low, filled with an edge I couldn't quite place. I straightened up, my gaze meeting hers. "I told you I would," I replied, keeping my tone calm. "Emily deserves both of us today. No more games." Her eyes flickered with a mixture of frustration and something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Regret, maybe. "This isn't going to fix everything, Jason," she said softly. "You can't just show up and act like nothing happened. This is still my daughter's wedding." "I'm not here to take over her day," I said, matching her tone. "I'm just here to be her father." There was a long pause, and for a moment, it felt like the world around us disappeared. It was just her and me, both of us fighting the weight of our past. The silence between us was deafening. And then, she did something I hadn't expected. She sighed, a deep, almost regretful sigh, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I just want what's best for her, Jason," she whispered, her voice softer now. "And I know that Emily wants you here. I've always known that. I've just been afraid of what that would mean for us." I didn't respond immediately. There was nothing more to say. We had both made mistakes, and now it was time to let the past go. The focus needed to be on Emily, on the future that lay ahead. As the ceremony began, I stood up to watch my daughter get married, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something. The woman I had once loved, the woman who had kept me from this moment, had just acknowledged that I had a place in Emily's life, and that meant everything. Today wasn't about us anymore. It was about Emily, her new beginning, and the family we still had in whatever form it took. The wedding ceremony proceeded, and despite the tension that had existed between my ex-wife and me, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride as I watched Emily. She was stunning. She stood there, glowing in her dress, her eyes bright with happiness as she exchanged vows with her soon-to-be husband. I felt an overwhelming wave of emotion wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, even if it was complicated by the years of distance and hurt between us. For the first time in so long, I felt like I had finally done something right. I had fought to be here. I had proven that I wasn't just a distant memory in my daughter's life, that I was someone who cared enough to show up, to witness the most important day of her life. The look on her face when she glanced at me during the ceremony, just for a second, was everything I needed. It wasn't just the acknowledgement of my presence, it was the understanding that, despite everything that had happened, I still mattered to her. But as the vows were exchanged and the kiss was sealed, I couldn't ignore the undercurrent of tension that still lingered between me and my ex-wife. Though she hadn't said anything more after our brief exchange earlier, I knew that the road to rebuilding the relationship with Emily wasn't going to be easy. Today might have been a milestone, but it was just the beginning of something much more complex. The real work of healing the past and understanding where we all stood was yet to come. The reception was beautiful, the food was incredible, and the music brought everyone to the dance floor. But through it all, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were still fragile. Emily was happy, of course, but I could tell there was a part of her that was still unsure about my presence. She hadn't been able to fully relax, as though she was walking a fine line between the two worlds: the world of her mother, where everything was predictable, and the world of her father, which had been full of absence and confusion. I walked over to her during a brief lull in the celebration, just as she was talking to a few of her cousins. When she saw me approaching, she smiled, but there was a certain hesitation in her eyes that made my heart ache. I could tell she was still struggling with everything: the love she had for both of us, but the pain of how the two of us had never been able to coexist without conflict. "Hey, sweetie," I said softly, trying to keep my voice light. "I just wanted to tell you how beautiful you look today." Her smile widened, though it was still tinged with uncertainty. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice a little quieter than usual. "I'm glad you're here." Her words meant more than she could know. I had no illusions that everything would be perfect today, but hearing her say that was enough for me. It was a step forward, a sign that perhaps the years of distance were beginning to fade. Still, I knew this wasn't over. One day, one moment, couldn't erase everything. But I could see that Emily was beginning to allow me back into her life, and that was worth fighting for. As we stood there, a few more family members came by to congratulate her, and Emily excused herself to join them. I watched her walk away, proud, yet still unsure of what her future held, especially with the complicated relationship I had with her mother hanging over us all. I didn't linger long at the reception. After all, Emily's life was moving forward, and I didn't want to overstay my welcome. But as I left, I noticed something that gave me a flicker of hope. My ex-wife was standing near the bar, talking to some of her friends, but she wasn't as guarded as she had been earlier. She wasn't avoiding me, and there was no animosity in her posture. It was subtle, but I saw it: a shift in the air between us. We were both here for Emily. And for the first time in years, it felt like we were both willing to let go of the past, if only for her sake. I took a deep breath as I walked toward the exit. My relationship with Emily wouldn't be fixed overnight, and my relationship with my ex-wife was still filled with complications. But one thing was clear: today had been a breakthrough. I wasn't just an outsider anymore. I had made my presence known, and I was willing to do whatever it took to stay in my daughter's life. It wasn't the happily ever after I had imagined, but it was a start. A small start, but a start nonetheless, and that was enough. The next few weeks after the wedding felt like a dream and a nightmare rolled into one. While Emily and I had made some progress, there was still so much left unsaid between us. It was clear that the tension from years of estrangement wouldn't just vanish overnight, but I was determined to keep moving forward. I wasn't going to let the past define our future. The hardest part, however, was finding a balance. My ex-wife still seemed to play a large role in everything: Emily's life, her decisions, and, strangely, even the distance between us. One afternoon, Emily called me. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but I could hear something in her tone that made me sit up straighter. "Dad, can you meet me tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something." My heart raced. I had no idea what this conversation would bring, but I knew it had to happen. After all the years of separation, it was time for us to have an honest talk about everything. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop we'd agreed on. As soon as Emily sat down, I could tell that this conversation was going to be different. There was a heaviness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hey, sweetie, what's on your mind?" I asked gently, trying to ease her into the conversation. I didn't want to pressure her, but I knew we couldn't keep tiptoeing around the truth forever. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. The wedding, the years we lost, everything. And I feel so guilty, Dad." My heart clenched. Guilt? She had nothing to feel guilty about. I was the one who had missed out on so much of her life. "Why would you feel guilty, Emily? I'm the one who should be apologizing. I wasn't there for you the way I should have been," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She shook her head, her hand trembling slightly as she reached across the table to take mine. "No, it's not that. I always knew you wanted to be there, but I didn't know how to let you back in. For so long, I was angry at you. I didn't know how to move past the hurt, and when I saw you at the wedding, I realized that I didn't want to keep holding on to the past anymore." Her words hit me like a wave, and for the first time I could feel the years of hurt, the distance, the frustration, all starting to dissolve between us. We were finally facing the truth. "I've missed you so much, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But I didn't know how to forgive you, and I didn't know if you were really ready to be part of my life again." I squeezed her hand tightly. "I understand, Emily. I wasn't ready either. I was too caught up in my own regrets, in my own guilt. But I'm ready now. I'm ready to be part of your life, and I'm not going anywhere." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a long moment, we just sat there, holding hands, letting the silence speak for us. It felt like a weight had been lifted, as though we had finally stepped out of the past and into something better. "I'm so sorry for everything, Emily," I said quietly. "I can't change the years we lost, but I promise I'm not going to let another day go by without being there for you." She smiled through her tears, and in that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. It wasn't going to be easy. There were still things to work through, moments to navigate, but we had started the journey of rebuilding what had been broken. "Thank you, Dad," she said softly, her voice steady. "I just need you to be here now. And I know we can't change the past, but I want us to have a future." I smiled back at her, my heart full. "We will, sweetie. We absolutely will." As we walked out of the coffee shop together, I felt a new sense of hope building inside me. For the first time in a long while, I could see the path ahead of us. It wasn't just about being at the wedding. It was about the future we were finally starting to create together. My relationship with Emily wasn't perfect, and I knew it would take time to heal all the scars from the years apart. But one thing was clear: the door was open now. We had both taken a step toward each other, and no matter what came next, we were no longer bound by the weight of the past. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves, and the hardest things to rebuild are the relationships we thought we'd lost forever. But love, true love, finds a way. And as I walked beside Emily, I knew that we were going to be okay. We were going to make it, one step at a time.